The Baltimore Ravens disappoint in a loss of the Indianapolis Colts in week 3, 22-19. In overtime, we talk about everything that happened, what's going on with this team, and a lot more. So be sure to stay tuned. I plan to talk about here on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Ravens podcast. We're your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast here. I'm your host, Kevin Ostraker of Ravens Wire, here with you, as always, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you so much for being here and making us your first listen each and every day for available all podcasting platforms, including over in video form on YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by LinkedIn. And LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to fast. About your job for free. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL, LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to push your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. It's a live instant reaction edition of the show coming after the Ravens. I'd call it disappointing 22-19 overtime loss to the Colts in week 3. It's a game the Ravens had multiple opportunities to put the game away in. Offensively, the team just didn't come to play for the most part. And obviously we can talk about the refs. We will do that here today. But it's a combination of a lot of things that contributed to this loss. So I appreciate everybody who is tuning in here with me after a loss. I always give the spiel after the Ravens lose for the first time, and honestly, every time. But the Ravens and with everything that they have going on this year, it's a lot of excitement. A loss like this can be pretty disappointing. So I appreciate the Ravens, for being as good as they were through 2 weeks. But obviously, there's a lot that still needs to be worked out for this team as a whole. So for Baltimore, they could have gone at 3-0. They end up faltering in their opportunity, and they lose a game that they should have won. They were home favorites, almost double-digit favorites, depending on where you looked. I think it was 8 over on FanDuel. And they had, again, so many opportunities to put the game away, but the offense just didn't show up and didn't come to play. So in the first part of the show, we'll be talking about just an overall recap of this game, what went wrong, what happened throughout the entirety of the game. Then in the second part, we'll move in to the Ravens and this offense, what's been going on there over the first couple of weeks and what we saw today with that unit. And then in the final part of the show, we'll end up talking refs, injuries, and more, but it'll all kind of flow into one show. So thank you again for tuning in. John Parsons in the game saying, ugh. Felix says, what a game. SMH. Connor saying, yeah, I know, right? So much to talk about. Let's get into it. It was a disappointing game. Lamar Jackson over the course of the start here, what was fine. The first drive for the Ravens was great. Todd Monken orchestrates his second straight incredible opening game drive. The Ravens go 12 plays for 80 yards and a touchdown in 6 minutes and 31 seconds, which, for the Ravens to do that for 2 straight weeks, set a tone. And that's something I was talking about. Set a tone if you're the Ravens and make sure that you establish that, we're going to run the ball. We're going to have success. We also can throw the ball and make some things happen. But then the Ravens didn't really do much else with the rest of the first half. Colts end up leading 10-7 at halftime. Baltimore sneaks back out in front at the end of the third quarter. But then it was a wacky and weird fourth quarter. I mean, there was a lot to talk about with the refs, but starting with the offense in the first half, 4 straight drives with a fumble. That it can't happen. Like you cannot have that sloppy play and then say, oh, the refs lost them the game or the refs lost us the game. And the Ravens aren't making excuses. Lamar didn't want to talk about the pass interference and everything that happened, and that was a ref call. But, you can't just say, well, the refs lost the Ravens the game, and that's the only reason why the Ravens lost. It was the fact that the Ravens got themselves in that position in the first place to say, if they didn't fumble on one of these drives, if the Kenyon Drake fumble, I see Matt in the chat saying that Drake fumble let the air out of the team. It did, because the Ravens were driving again into the Colts red zone. And to Drake's credit, I mean, it wasn't a play where he was just swinging the ball freely and had no ball security. He did have the ball high and tight from what I could tell. But yeah, the Ravens end up fumbling that play and puts the air right back into the sails of the Colts. And that to me was a huge play early on that I think took all the momentum out of the stadium and the Ravens fans that were there, took the momentum out of the team. And then it was just fumble after fumble after fumble. And it's kind of ridiculous that it even happened in the first place for a team that we saw the sloppy play happen in week one. And we're like, yeah, you know what? Fine. It's week one, new offensive group, trying to figure some stuff out. But this week, we can talk about injuries all we want to, and we can talk about refs all we want to. But at the end of the day, the Ravens, Odell being out did not change the fact that Kenyon Drake fumbled, or Marcus Williams being out did not change the fact that Sam Mustipher had a pretty poor snap on a play that I don't even think was ready to be snapped in the first place. So it's offensive mistakes. I mean, the defense, I thought that their job. I thought the defense carried throughout the course of this game and for the most part played really well. I mean, Kyle Hamilton played lights out. He was unbelievable. 9 tackles, 3 sacks in the first half. Like, he was doing everything he could. This defense consistently, for all the mistakes the offense made, the defense consistently got the offense back on the field or figured out, a way to stop the Colts from scoring a touchdown. I mean, the Colts in this game only had the 2 touchdowns. Well, no, it was the one. It was Gardner Minshew to Zach Moss. It was a great catch by Zach Moss. I know Patrick Queen's beating himself up about that a little bit, but I actually thought it was pretty solid coverage by Queen. Moss just made a really nice catch. So credit to him for that. I mean, credit to Michael Pittman for his catch late in the game. But the Ravens defense held the Colts to 8 of 22 on third down. That's enough to usually win you a football game. The Colts held the ball for longer, but it wasn't like the Colts were doing as much. The Ravens compared to the Colts, 3.9 yards per play. Now, was the run defense great for the Ravens in this game? No, it wasn't. The Colts, Zach Moss had a lot of success, 30 carries for 122 yards for Zach Moss. So I'm not saying the Ravens defense played a perfect game, but it should have been enough. But the offense just made mistake after mistake. And we can talk about what happened in the fourth quarter, where the Ravens pretty much had this game locked up and won. But then Zay Flowers calls for the fair catch on the punt, which apparently John Harbaugh tried to specify it a little bit. He ended up saying that the Ravens had told Zay Flowers to take the fair catch because the clock had read under 2 minutes, but then they changed the clock to over 2 minutes and they couldn't communicate to Zay that he shouldn't take the fair catch anymore. So it was, I guess, just miscommunication from the Ravens and Zay. But that ended up giving the Colts so much extra time. And at the end of the day, for me, was one of the key reasons why the Ravens couldn't win the game. Now, yes, the face mask penalty on Zay Flowers that happened for the Colts clearly ripped his face mask, and it was a penalty on the Ravens that ended up, the whole game ended up not coming down to those 2 plays, the pass interference and the face mask. But we can't just sit here and ignore it and say, oh, the refs had no impact on the game. The Ravens win the game if the refs don't, or if the refs make the Zay Flowers call. If they make both Zay Flowers calls, the Ravens probably win the game because Justin Tucker kicks the field goal in overtime. If the face mask happens, then the Ravens get to replay the down on third down because there was also a penalty on them. It's a fact that the refs had an impact on the game, but you can't sit and say, yeah, well, the refs were the only reason. So that's what I want to kind of hammer home here, where Felix saying, the refs did not call the PI. Connor saying because they didn't trust Justin Tucker. And that's a key point in this too. If you're in the chat, if you're listening to here live, I'm interested to know what your opinion is on what John Harbaugh should have done, because twice, it was not once, it was twice in overtime, the Ravens did not trust Justin Tucker, once from 62, I believe, the other from 64, to make that field goal. Now, look, 60-plus yarders are not easy, even for Justin Tucker. Now, he makes them look easy sometimes, but there's a lot more that goes into it than just, oh, he's Justin Tucker, he can make it. I would have probably trusted Justin Tucker on the 62-yarder. He just came up short on that 61-yarder to end regulation. I would have probably trusted him there. I understand them going for fourth down on the 64-yarder. I mean, I get it. But when you have Justin Tucker there, he's the greatest kicker of all time. He's proven that he can make those kicks in high-leverage moments. I think you probably live and die by Justin Tucker at that point. Just me personally, that's what I would have done. So very controversial, I'd say, coaching decisions there from John Harbaugh. Robbie C saying Zay is a rookie, not sure about Bateman. Injuries are horrible. I thought Zay, receiving, Zay had a pretty fine game. He made a couple of rookie mistakes with the illegal formation and him not going out of bounds on a play and the fair catch. It was just little rookie mistake things. And, Robbie, like you said, Zay's a rookie. You kind of expect those things to happen over the course of a season. And, I'm not blaming him. Bateman, on the other hand, yes, it's a little concerning, the usage right now. I don't know if Ravens are still ramping him up. He's not really getting a ton of separation right now, not having a ton of one-on-one opportunities. But obviously, you would like to see more John Parsons saying Ravens injury curse continues. Yes, it does. 100%. I don't know what in the world is going on with their injuries, but it's been pretty terrible with the injury luck that they've had over the course of the last, I don't even know how long it's been now, since 2019, honestly, is when that whole thing started. The COVID thing happened with them in 2020. So I don't really know what Baltimore has to do to get the injury curse off of them, but I don't know. Nothing changed. There were still more injuries that happened in this game, and coming up in the second part of the show, we will talk about those injuries. We'll talk about what's going on with the offense, what we saw from Lamar in this game as well. So be sure to stay tuned. So lots to talk about on this, unfortunately, non-victory Sunday on this Locked On Ravens episode. But first, this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business, and you want to be 100% certain you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs lets you find the right people for your team faster and for free, and I've had a ton of success on LinkedIn, finding jobs, finding friends' jobs, and just getting in the loop on what's out there. And it's really easy to create a free job post on LinkedIn Jobs. All you have to do is add your job on the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. They have simple tools you can use, like screening questions, to make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience. So you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and who you would like to hire. It's really important also to start and end the year strong. The right team member could really help you do that. Despite small business, LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires for suiting competitors. LinkedIn Jobs lets you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster, but your job for free. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to push your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're back. It's our second segment of Locked On Ravens on Sunday after the Ravens' disappointing Week 3 loss to the Colts. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, breaking it down live. We have people in the chat giving their opinions. If you're catching this live on YouTube, I appreciate you being here. If you're catching it after the fact, both YouTube, audio form, I appreciate that as well. Support. We're a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast. We'll be right back here tomorrow, 6 a.m. on Monday, talking about a little bit more who's to blame for this Ravens loss. And if you want to subscribe, follow along, I greatly appreciate all the support. Subscribe on Subtext for exclusive content, one-on-one text conversations, and more there. So, yeah, going back to John's point about the injury curse, there were some more injuries that happened in this game. David Ojabo ended up going out with it. I think it was an ankle injury early in the game. I think he tried to come in for a couple plays after, but I don't think he got in after that. Again, he was injured for most of the game. Gus Edwards goes in concussion protocol. We'll see how that plays out for the week against the Browns coming up. Be a huge loss, losing both JK and Gus Edwards. And then you also have, Tylan Wallace, whose hamstring, he was doubtful to return with a hamstring. He didn't return. And yeah, just, multiple different injuries for the Ravens. Rashad Bateman was a little gimpy after the game, said it wasn't serious with the hamstring, but said it tightened up on him. It is crazy just how insane the Ravens injury luck has been, and not in a good way. Obviously, the Ravens move on from Steve Saunders this offseason. I think a lot of people expected change there, but it's the same principles. And if you haven't listened to our Friday show with Kadri Ismail, where we previewed the Colts game, in that we talk about timelines and just how these Ravens players can get back on the field. And I think it's relevant now. So if you haven't checked that out, I recommend you do so, because we talk medical stuff with Kadri, who obviously helped the Ravens win a Super Bowl, but also has now gotten into the training in medical field and understands a little bit about how these injuries and training methods work. Matt saying coaching at the end of the game problematic as well, from clock management, lighting the foot off the gas and failure to close out the game. The ref no calls sucked, but it never should have been there. Yes, I agree with this, Matt. And it's what I was saying at the beginning of the show, where you can blame the refs all you want to. I'm not saying don't be mad about it. I'm upset about it. Like, it was unbelievable. Like, these refs get paid to do a job and do the job well at the highest level. And is NFL reffing easy? No, it's hard. It's a bang, bang thing. You miss calls. But in that moment, it wasn't like it was a second down and it was the second quarter and it didn't really have it was in the final moments of the game, right when the Ravens were trying to either secure or go win the game, and the refs just blow it. But you can't say that the refs were the only reason they lost. Lamar made some bad decisions. He had an okay game. I don't think it was as bad as people are making it out to be, but he didn't play well enough to have the Ravens win the game, and that's what you need out of him. But yes, the clock management was interesting, and I know there have been John Harbaugh and controversial decisions are, we're not accustomed to those. We have seen him do that in the past and have controversial fourth down decisions, 2-point decisions, but not trusting Justin Tucker was, I think, the controversial thing for me. Mike John saying it's tough to watch teams like Miami and Kansas City and see a way we can compete with them. We're struggling with Indy without Anthony Richardson. I mean, yeah, Buffalo went out there and put up a ton of points on Washington. And yeah, I mean, look, the Colts defense is better than people give them credit for. Their front seven is great. They came into this game with a top rush defense in the league, and the Ravens ended up actually doing decently well in the pass game. But the issue was the Colts secondary missing guys and not very established. I think Julian Blackmon is probably their most established. Kenny Moore also, two of their established guys, but they're relying on rookies and other guys who you wouldn't expect to be up there. And they couldn't get consistent production out of their passing game. And once the Colts started to blitz, something that has been a trend for Lamar, sometimes he struggles with the pressure and getting the ball out. Once Gus Bradley decided to blitz, Lamar started throwing balls behind receivers. Wasn't doing it all game, but once the pressure started, he started to throw multiple balls behind receivers. And while he was getting the ball out quicker, that's what he should have done. Obviously, you need to do that when the pressure and the blitz comes. He wasn't making the throws on target. John saying our line got pushed back into Lamar consistently. The line did not have as good of a day as they did on Sunday against the Bengals a week ago. Wish it was a little bit better for them. We saw a couple of sacks from Lamar. Now, Lamar did his Lamar thing and got out of the pocket and escaped and did all this cool stuff. But again, there was some plays like that play where the Ravens were in position to win the game, and Justin Tucker with the field goal. And Lamar ends up going back, taking the sack, and just barely throwing the ball away at the end. Those are the decisions that you can't have as a quarterback who has the greatest kicker of all time on his side. All you have to be is figuring out decisions. Lamar's decision-making has been up and down over the course of his career. I'm not saying every quarterback makes every right decision. Every quarterback makes mistakes. I'm not trying to just fry Lamar here, but again, I'm gonna praise him where praise is due. I'm going to give him criticism where criticism is due. I think that's fair and just of me to do, and I want to do that to be fair and just. So Lamar has to be better. I don't think it was as bad as a game as some people think, but the pressure question is still there. Lamar against the blitz is still there. We've seen him do really well against it. We've seen him had really, really good moments against it, but also really bad ones. The high highs and the low lows, I guess you could call it. So John also saying Harbaugh said it was the footing with the offensive line. Could have been. It was a really wet. It was a miserable game. Like, it was just a terrible, miserable game overall. Robbie saying Gordon looked pretty good, but makes me nervous. Hurry back, Mitchell. Gordon looked okay to me, Robbie. I mean, I still think Mitchell makes much more of an impact. Obviously, hopefully you're getting back Justice Hill soon. Gus Edwards hopefully can suit up. But the Ravens running back situation is an issue. Again, the only guy that's a needle mover at this point to me still in free agency is Leonard Fournette. And even then, I'm not sure how much of a needle mover that is for them. Like, Kenyon Drake is a fine practice squad guy. Melvin Gordon's a fine practice squad guy. I'm not sure Leonard Fournette at this point is any better than, Justice Hill. Maybe Keaton Mitchell honestly provides you more because of his speed. So I don't know what they do there. If Gus Edwards has to miss time and Justice Hill's still out, are you giving Melvin Gordon and Kenyon Drake 30 carries a game? I don't know what you do. Do you rely on Lamar more? That's a big issue for me overall. Brandon saying this is the reason why I've stopped betting. I think did you mean betting, Brandon? But yeah, betting's crazy, especially when you do it on your own team. Like, if you go over on FanDuel, you look at the Lamar props and everything, and you bet on Lamar and he has a bad game. It's like double whammy. Like the Ravens, if you bet on them on FanDuel, it's double whammy if you lose. So I definitely get that, Brandon. Michael Media saying too many soy products being served in the facilities. Is that what you got for the injuries, Michael? Is the Ravens having too many soy products for that's why they're getting injured? So maybe Michael's cracked the code. No more soy products for the Ravens to stop their injuries. Robbie's saying Bateman hurt his hamstring. Yeah, apparently it tightened up on him. He said it was nothing serious himself, but I'm sure he'll go in for testing and rehab over the course of the week. Might see him pop up on the injury report is limited, or maybe he doesn't practice on Wednesday, comes back on Thursday. It's just every single year, though. It's the injuries all over the place. Both sides, all three, honestly, all three sides of the ball. I don't know where it is. And it's early in the season, and we're only in week 3. And I mean, I can just list off. I know Lamar retweeted an injury thing and kind of put his crazy expression as just being like, what the heck is going on? I put out kind of the stars that have been going on. Ravens players who have suffered an injury through week 3 so far, just some of them: Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Williams, J.K. Dobbins, Ronnie Stanley, Tyler Linderbaum, Moto Beckham Jr., Odafe Owe, Justice Hill, David Ajabo, Gus Edwards, Rashad Bateman, not including other guys like Kadarius Washington, Tyler Wallace, Nick Morris, the long snapper. It's just everywhere. Everywhere you pop up, it's injuries, injuries, injuries. So John says bring in an exorcist. You got to bring some sage, just go around M&T Bank, go around the locker room, just go sage it, go cleanse it. Rush in here saying, what's up, Kev? What's up, Rush? Appreciate you tuning in, especially after a loss. I know it's hard to listening to, football once your team loses. I've been there, but I have to talk about it. And I get to talk about it now. So got to do that. Felix saying, I think the refs need to be fined just like the players do. My thing, Felix, actually is that, well, yes, but also I think the refs should have post-game press conferencing. I think the refs, just like the players, should be grilled by the media. I've had this take for years. I know, like in the NBA, they have the last 2-minute report, and there's I think in the NFL too, there's like a field judge who speaks to media after the game. But I think that there should be a public, media interview, just like the players, and the referees should be held accountable, just like the players and the coaches are for their calls. I 100% agree with you there, Felix. And Robbie makes a point about Kyle Hamilton. So we're going to talk. Oh, wait, hold on. John says footing was about Tucker, but it may have affected the offensive line too. So, okay, that's what John Harbaugh said about the footing for Justin Tucker in the field goal. So I appreciate that, John. I must have misread it. So yes, the footing was rough out there. So I get, Justin Tucker slips on a 62-yarder, doesn't get there. He gets injured. You maybe don't want to risk it, but the 61-yarder just barely doesn't get there. And maybe that's why it had to happen, because of the foot. But we'll get to Robbie's comment about Kyle Hamilton in the final segment. We'll be talking about what the Ravens are going to do moving forward with their injury situation and just what to make of this team right now so far. So be sure to stay tuned. So a lot to get to on this episode, live edition of Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by DoorDash. And if you're missing the syrup for your pancakes, or maybe you ran out of your favorite coffee creamer, with DoorDash grocery delivery, you can get what you want right when you need it. And, you've trusted DoorDash a ton, maybe over the course of your life, to deliver your restaurant favorites. Now you can get groceries delivered that actually delivers too. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. You'll get exactly what you ordered, or we'll make it right. So sit back, enjoy quality groceries just like you picked them yourself. And if you want even more value, you can save on all your groceries and restaurant favorites with a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership. Dash Pass. With each substitution right in the app and the best-in-class customer support, DoorDash delivers groceries exactly how you want it. So you get 50% off your first DoorDash order, up to $20 value when you use code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout. Limited time offer. Terms apply. That's 50% off, $20, no minimum subtotal, and $0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app. In the App Store, enter code LOCKEDONNFL. Don't forget, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 or 50%, off your first order with DoorDash. We're back here. It's our final segment, live edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostrager still talking with you here. Ravens lose 22-19 in overtime to the Colts. It was disappointing. Ravens had an opportunity to go to 3-0, keep sole first place in the AFC North, but Cleveland wins. Pittsburgh playing tonight at 8:15, and then Pittsburgh might be playing Monday, actually. But yeah, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati both playing in prime time, so we won't have exact information on what the AFC North completely will look like. But the Ravens and Browns currently tied atop the North at 2-1. Robbie made a comment about Kyle Hamilton. We'll talk about him. Absolute stud in this game. I remember, and I tweeted out during the game, remember when Hamilton lost that one-on-one rep during the joint practice? Was it Riley Webb? It might have been Riley Webb who it was, or Sean Monster, some rookie undrafted receiver who just burned Kyle Hamilton. And everyone said it was such a bad pick. The Ravens should never have drafted him. Safety in the first, He's come on so strong. And obviously this was, I don't want to say it's his coming out party. I don't want to say that because he was good before this, but this was like, oh yeah, like I'd be shocked if he wasn't at least in the conversation to win Defensive Player of the Week, even though the Ravens did lose this game. If the Ravens won, I think it'd be a no-brainer lock. But at this point, the Ravens have gotten another one of these great rookie guys that are not rookie, but second-year guy who can go all over the place. During his rookie season, we saw him do it, though. That's where I was getting the rookie from. His rookie season, we saw him play in the slot really well and just go all over the field and be this Ravens Swiss Army knife. He's obviously taken on more of a role now that Chuck Clark isn't there. 9 tackles, 3 sacks in the first half, which is just absolutely nuts for Hamilton. So I'm really excited to see how he continues to grow over the course of his career, and obviously this season too. We also have a Colts fan. Yeah, Richard Rhodes saying, GG fellas, hashtag Colts Nation. Look, you got to tip your hat to the Colts. They go in there without Anthony Richardson. Gardner Minshew comes in, and the Colts defense kept the Colts in this game. I mean, the Ravens offense is doing everything in their power. So yeah, it was a good game, but a disappointing one for sure for the Ravens. So I appreciate you tuning in, Richard, and giving you a Colts perspective on this, or giving me a Colts perspective. But John saying, does anyone grade the refs? It is performance based for the refs based off of getting bigger assignments. At least I know, like in the NBA, they do it a certain way, the NFL, they do it a certain way, MLB, etc. In the NFL, I think it's performance based. And depending on your score, you get to, do playoff games, do Super Bowls. And the worse your score is, the less assignments you get, the less, big time assignments you get. So I would not expect the crew from today to be very highly graded late in that game. But again, it's like you're sitting there as a referee, you're right in front of the play. Now, the argument I saw against the Zay Flowers pass interference was the ball was uncatchable, like the ball went into the dirt. But I haven't like really watched the replay. I guess I can try to pull it up here right now as we're doing this. But I don't feel like, like he gets hooked. It wasn't like there was just a hand on the hip and there wasn't any like torque. Like he got turned by the defender. And to me, I'm watching it right now. You can see him get hooked. And no, the ball was catchable. Like it's right in front of him. Zay can dive for that ball and lay out for that ball if he doesn't get hooked. I think EJ Speed was the linebacker who was on him. And that's the thing Peter King talked about in training camp. It was, Zay Flowers, in order to stop him, you have to hold him. You have to commit a penalty on him. And both those plays were against Zay Flowers. The Colts committed them on Zay Flowers. So in terms of the offense, I just thought the offensive play calling got pretty vanilla after first couple of drives, especially after the first one. This was probably Todd Monken's worst game as the coordinator for the Ravens. It's only been 3 games, but I was not super impressed with the play calling as a whole. That third down run to Gus Edwards, I mean, everybody saw it coming. We have never stopping here saying refs sold. They did. I agree with you, but it wasn't just the refs, though. I will give, everybody that and say, if the offense executes more, they're not even in the position to have the referee sell. So at the end of the day, it's disappointing because the Ravens had such an opportunity. It was a game that many people expected the Ravens to win. I expected the Ravens to win, and they just could not get the job done. And moving forward for them, they now have to go back-to-back road divisional games against Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Those games are never easy. They're down all those players. We should start to see some guys come back this week. Like, I would not be shocked if Marlon came back this week, or at least he gets ramp up and he's able to play a little bit. But I think that, still Marcus Williams probably not coming back anytime soon. We'll see if Odell and Nafe are ready to go. Hopefully Rashad Bateman's able to play. Hopefully Gus Edwards too. But, I always don't like using injuries happen and that's why the Ravens are losing. But look, we can't ignore the fact that they have all these injuries. Like, they are missing double-digit starters, I think, now at this point, combined offense, defense, special teams. Teams just don't, lose that many guys and drop off in performance. My saying is, after every injury, your ceiling gets lowered and your floor gets lowered, especially the better the player is, the worse the ceiling and floor gets lowered. So for the Ravens, they've built up the depth, but teams can't survive this. Like, the Ravens can do it. Like, Lamar can do it, but they have to play better. And I think we saw the depth step up last week. They didn't step up this week. And yeah, I don't know. Never stop saying Lamar choke, likely drop, and Justin going for 60-yard field goals is crazy. The Tucker field goal I was fine with. The likely drop was egregious. That was terrible. He has to catch that ball. And again, another mistake that arguably you could say cost the Ravens the game. Lamar choked. I will say his game wasn't as bad as people think it is, but he didn't play like particularly well. Like, the end of the game for him, the bad decisions, started throwing balls behind receivers. I think the pressure did get to him. Not like pressure like, oh, am I going to do well? Am I not? I don't think he was feeling pressure. He was feeling pressure from the Colts blitzing. Once the blitzes started to come, I think it threw Lamar off kilter a little bit. But again, you have to be able to hit those short throws and those timing throws. And part of that also is just giving Lamar more security blankets out of the backfield. Like, run a running back. If you're not going to use that extra protection in a blitz situation, run a running back out to the flat and just have the option there for Lamar to just check the ball down to, or just throw the ball into the ground, just don't take sacks. That to me, Lamar doesn't, he has the ability to maneuver and run out of sacks and do Lamar Houdini things. But I think we saw him try to do a little too much on some plays, mainly that one where Tucker was in range and he didn't end up getting it. John Parsons saying it's a conference loss too. What hurts about it. It's the second worst loss you can suffer. There are 3 tiers to me. Division losses, tier 1, that's disastrous. You don't want to lose those. Second tier is conference losses. That obviously hurts a lot when it comes to division seeding and conference seeding. And then third is NFC losses. Those don't count nearly as much. Conference loss is big. So we'll have to see how they respond. Derek Jones saying offense hasn't been in sync since week 1. I don't know why people are surprised in the terrible weather game. It also is the fact that, look, the fact that we saw the Ravens offense play really well in the second half against the Texans. We saw flashes against the Bengals. It wasn't all going to be like that. Like for example, this is not a great one, but the Dolphins put up 70 points. The Dolphins aren't going to score 70 points in every single game. Some games are going to look worse, and the Dolphins will probably maybe never score 70 points again. But not every game is going to look like your perfect game, like your best game. Sometimes execution does waver. But the thing now is, yes, this game was terrible execution-wise for the Ravens offense. The issue is that you can't have it be consistent. And what we saw in week 1, the first half of that week 1 game was super sloppy. And I said, again, maybe that's just week 1 rust. But then it carried over to this week because I didn't think we saw it in week 2. I don't think the Ravens were super sloppy in week 2. But again, they had a couple holding penalties in week 2 and this, that, and the other. They have to be better at self-inflicted wounds. They lost themselves this game. The Colts played to win. Like, the Colts won the game and they did their job. But the Ravens lost themselves this game with a little sprinkle of the refs on the side, I guess, if you want to put it that way. Never stop saying I'm not mad at JT missing, but he was putting long yardage field goals. Yeah, not getting him closer. I mean, I don't know if it's just me, but I felt like when Devin Duvernay returned that punt to, was it midfield, right over the logo maybe, I thought the Ravens had the game won. Like, I thought, they had Justin Tucker. The offense, surely they can pick up just like 10 yards, right? That, to me, I'm like, all right, fine. That's awesome. Devin Duvernay won them the game. But the Ravens offense could not muster those yards. And they had, I think that was when they had 4 shots when the Zay Flowers thing happened, and they couldn't get it done. Big Germ saying the Ravens are still a tier below Dolphins and Chiefs, never seem to be able to take the next step. And I think that's what's the most disappointing to me and maybe, to others listening or watching this, is they had an opportunity to go 3-0. They had an opportunity to make a statement. The Colts were never going to roll over. And I say this every week where you can't take any team lightly. But a lot of people expected the Ravens to win this game, even if it wasn't pretty. Today, it was not pretty, but there were still expectations that, a team who's competing for a Super Bowl, who has all these expectations, should be able, even if it's not pretty, to put away the Colts without their starting quarterback in a game where if they want to run the ball, they should be able to. We saw the Dolphins put up 70, the Chiefs are the Chiefs, the Bills put up, 37. The Ravens have to get to that point. There's a lot of season left. I'm not hitting the panic button right now, but I just think that the disappointing feelings are amplified because of everything that happened in this game. Zeppia saying that O-line needs a lot of work done to it. Hopefully Stanley and Linderbaum coming back will help. I thought Sam Mustipher played solid. McCary had a little bit more of a rough day than he did in week 2. But yeah, I think that hopefully Stanley and Linderbaum coming back will help that, but definitely compared to week 2, this was not quite the game that the Ravens had there. This game in week 3 was a little more disappointing for the offense in general. But I appreciate everybody tuning into this live edition of Locked On Ravens, especially after a loss. It means a lot to me that you're sitting here listening, and I know it's tough to listen to, talk about your favorite team after they lose a game, especially like this, but I appreciate it. We'll be right back here tomorrow on Monday, 6 a.m., breaking down this game a little more, talking a little more about who's to blame in this one a lot more. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.